The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. Today, you've joined us for Unanet's webinar, Top Signs. It's time to make switching your ERP a priority. Our speaker today is Rich Wilkinson. Rich has been with Unanet for about a year, and I've worked with Rich in many positions over the last couple of years. He's an excellent industry subject matter expert, and he's going to walk us through today's webinar. A little bit of housekeeping, we will be sending you the slides after the webinar. We will also be sending you a recording. So relax and enjoy yourself. And on to you, Rich. Rich, I think we have some audio issues. I'm not hearing you yet.
Okay, let's try that.
There you go. Perfect.
Thank you, Jess. Welcome, everyone. As Jessica said, we're going to be talking about top signs. It's time to make switching your ERP a priority. That's Enterprise Resource Planning System. A lot of systems claim to be that. An awful lot of those that claim it really aren't. So let's get started. A lot of companies today are using an older system, what we refer to as a legacy system. Sometimes it fits pretty well. Sometimes it doesn't. A lot of legacy systems, especially for smaller companies, are very low-cost systems. They were acquired and implemented when the company was very small because they were literally the only thing that was affordable. But they'll only take you so far. Unfortunately, growth happens with small GovCon companies, and it doesn't happen smoothly. Commercial companies tend to grow on a smooth curve. They'll go from 8 employees to 10, maybe 12. They'll go from 12 to 15, 15 to 18, 18 to 20. GovCons, for the most part, don't do that. They get to 8 or 10 employees. They start putting out some proposals. When they win one, suddenly they're 25. And they put out some more proposals, maybe a bunch of them. They win 1 or even 2, and now they're 50. It's a step function. And if you're using one of those systems that can't take you all the way, it can really give out on you really quickly. Some of the systems we see with companies looking around for a new or a replacement are older systems that were really good for their time, but their time has passed. They were leaders in their day, but technology has moved on without them. There are systems out there today that are still based on COBOL. They may have a fancy front end on them, but on the backside, they're still COBOL flat files with all of the warts and scars that come with running a COBOL system on today's infrastructure. Some of the systems we see out there, and these are mostly the replacement systems proposed for the first two, are very big, very complex, very expensive, and many of them are built on what's called a best of breed concept. That best of breed concept involves a core system. For most of these vendors, it's the accounting system, and an add-on for example, time and expense, or an add-on for graphical dashboards, an add-on for budgeting and planning, an add-on for ad hoc report writing to supplement the reports in the core system that either are out of date or one size fits all and you aren't one size. Some of those very big, very complex systems can be very powerful. They're also very expensive. They're expensive to acquire. They're also very expensive to implement. And unfortunately, the expense doesn't stop when the implementation does, because those big, expensive systems have a lot of moving parts. And somebody has to manage the parts and the movement of data back and forth between one piece of the system and another. Best of breed also had its day, and that day has probably come and gone. And what we're seeing today is much more a trend toward an integrated system. Every now and then, we'll run into a system that was intended or developed for a completely different purpose. Manufacturing systems, for example, that have been converted or modified, amplified, augmented, whichever words you'd like to use, to be used in a different environment. For example, a GovCon services environment. They can be very effective. They can also impose some really serious compromises on how you do things and what you're able to do because of their origins and the fact that they were never really intended to do those kinds of things. Some of those systems aren't even supported by their original developers or manufacturers anymore. They're legacy, and even in their own companies that continue to sell them, and have been adapted for the other purposes that they're used for, because frankly, they have been outstripped in the markets they were originally designed for. Even if you think you might see or hear one of your systems in those four examples, sometimes a legacy system actually works just fine. And it's hard to tell sometimes if that legacy system is starting to reach its limits or might put you way in over your head with that next big win. So let's talk about some signs. We'd like to talk about 5 signs that you may have outgrown your ERP and it's crept up on you. You might not even realize that the capabilities of your back office systems are not meeting your needs until you start to look at some of the symptoms. For example, are you experiencing spreadsheet chaos? Do you have to do a spreadsheet to figure out where you are? This is the project manager's number one complaint. Project managers tend to be fairly simple people. They just have one question: where am I? They want to know every day, where am I? They can look backwards and see where they've been. Some systems will let them look forward to see where they're going. But an awful lot of systems can't tell them day to day, where am I? Because those systems are periodic. You can only see labor at the end of a pay period. You can only see expense reports when we process them twice a month. You can only see accounts payable data when the accounts payable runs are done, maybe once or twice a month. Those spreadsheets are natural tools to augment a system that isn't doing all those things for you, but spreadsheets are very expensive. They're almost impossible to document. And the chaos that ensues from having one version of the same spreadsheet on my desktop and a different one on yours and something else on the CFO's and yet another version on the president's desktop makes for a lot of wasted time and effort just trying to figure out where they're different and keeping them all in sync. Another sign that you might have outgrown your existing ERP system is security requirements. I think we've all been just about beaten to death with the NIST standard 800-171 or 800-051 or 56, I think it's 51, about securing controlled unclassified information, what DoD calls CUI, or securing your system on a host provider. That's the 800-051. If your provider, and if your provider is yourself, all the responsibilities of these security requirements fall on you. If you're using a hosting provider, some of those systems aren't keeping up with the requirements of the security standards. And we've heard it over and over. We talk to companies sometimes about securing their systems, and they go, oh, it's just an accounting system. I don't have any controlled unclassified information in there. DoD in particular really doesn't agree with that. They think that your accounting information is in fact CUI. So it becomes really important to pick a provider that is in lockstep with those evolving security standards, and they are evolving. Another sign that you might have outgrown that ERP is your billing process. If your billing process has become primarily manual, because a manual process is required to meet the precise needs of your customers, and every one of them is different. We all know that. It would be much more efficient if those billings and the billing processes could occur within the system and not have to be taken outside, put in a spreadsheet, massaged, and then input back into the system so the system knows what's been billed. There are tools that can do that. We're going to talk to you about one in just a minute. If yours isn't doing it, you might have outgrown it. Another strong sign is when your growth is causing your back office costs to increase in lockstep with your growth. That shouldn't happen. The fact is, the relationship between back office staff, accounting, even project management, and the growth of your company should not be linear. It is not normally linear. It is normally a function with a decreasing slope. There are economies of scale that happen. When you go from 100 to 200 employees, or you double your revenues, you shouldn't have to double your back office staff. And if your system is doing what it should be, you don't. If you find that in your case, your back office staff is growing in lockstep with your growth, it's probably because too many things are happening manually and outside your system. Consider a different tool that will increase those efficiencies and do the hard data manipulation in software instead of on your employees' desktops. Finally, everybody has audits. Audits are a fact of life. There are pre-award audits, there are proposal audits, there are incurred cost submission audits. I've even seen, for the first time in several years, an occasional time card floor check in the last few months. But if audits leave you scrambling for information before the audit starts, during the audit, even after the audit's over, and having to pull together information, put it in spreadsheets to give your auditors, you may have outgrown that ERP, or what's functioning as an ERP in your case. Your system ought to provide the information required to do an audit without having to scramble and manually input data into spreadsheets. It ought to be able to support that audit during the audit and even after the audit. If changes have to be made, they ought to be supported by your system. And if they're not, maybe you've outgrown what you're using. Let's talk about that spreadsheet chaos a little bit. A lot of our people we talk to have disparate systems. They have one accounting system, they have a different time and expense system, something else for planning and budgeting, and they do it using spreadsheets to get data back and forth between their systems. We say that shouldn't be the case. We'd like you to say no to that spreadsheet chaos. We'd like to make your project lifecycle come alive from the CRM and pipeline management of your BD people all the way through project generation, project initiation, the planning, the execution phase of the project, and the accounting to build that customer, get the cash back in so you can spend it again. We do it at Unanet with an integrated tool set. From beginning to end, one database, one application, one technology stack, one security model for access. And we put that data in and use it over and over and over, but we put it in one time and manage it in one place. Security concerns are a fact of life today. If you haven't had a breach or your hosting provider hasn't had a breach, it's unusual. In fact, you probably have and don't know it. The breaches we know about, from OPM to the big credit reporting companies, those are just the tip of the iceberg. Those are the ones we know about. There's probably, and this is not me, this is from the security experts, there's probably 10 or 20 times that many that have happened or are happening right now. We don't even know about. DoD contractors were required at the end of 2017 to be compliant with NIST 800-171. That standard is entitled Protecting Controlled Unclassified Information in Non-Federal Information Systems and Organizations. They're talking about your systems, your organizations, and protecting data that could, even with censuses, putting together a lot of seemingly unrelated facts to form a picture, reveal information our government doesn't want revealed outside of the contracting environment. The standard is empowered in the FAR, or in the DFARS, in 3 primary clauses. Look for these clauses in your contract. The first one there is about compliance with safeguarding the information. The second one is about limitations on third-party contractor reporting. This one is a hold harmless clause that protects corporations that are companies that report a cyber breach. It gives them a safe harbor against liability if they do the proper reporting. And finally, the last clause is about cyber incident reporting, the reporting itself, how to report it, where to report it, when to report it, and what happens after you report it. All of these things under your control. The question is, do your systems meet all the requirements of the controls? There are 110 controls. There are 14 control families, and they're about things, particularly when it comes to your ERP system, like securing your access. Do you have dual factor authentication capability in your system? A lot of the security experts say this is required over any system that contains CUI. The ERP system you choose can make this very easy, or it can make it very hard, particularly for legacy systems. Some of the older systems I talked about early on that are really repurposed COBOL systems are older systems that have been converted for a different purpose, don't have the technology underpinnings to support things like multi-factor authentication or authentication controls. The fact is, for systems like that, you might have a cyber breach and never know. And most of those kinds of systems simply don't have the ability to encrypt the data either at rest or in motion, as required by the standard. Unanet software is developed, hosted, supported in the United States, and gives you all the tools you need to secure your system and your data in accordance with 171. And if you are hosting in Unanet's cloud, all of our cloud instances are hosted at a FedRAMP moderate compliant secure cloud. We think that's the minimum that should be done, and there's more that's capable that it's capable of. That third one we talked about, your manual billing processes. The fact is, manual billing processes are horrifically expensive, not because they're complicated, but because they're recurring and they never end. If you get stuck in a manual billing process because your current system can't support a billing or an invoice out of the system that meets your client's needs, that problem won't fix itself. It doesn't get better with time. And as much as we'd like to think our clients will work with us, I've seen few, if any, clients in my entire career that would back off of invoicing requirements and say, oh, okay, you don't have to do that. Just do it like it comes out of your system. I keep waiting for that to happen. It doesn't really. When that billing cycle, month after month after month, is taking manual effort just to get a bill in the format a customer requires, that's expense that can never be recovered. While it's in your G&A, it just puffs up your G&A and makes it higher still. We have a case study from a company called Capital Edge Consulting, a Unanet client, of course. They're a management consulting firm. They work primarily with the federal government. They needed to focus on their billing cycle to reduce duplication of efforts with a system that was easy to implement and even a project manager could use. They needed a software system with a responsive support team, like the one at Unanet, that could solve their problems in real time, keep them running, fix problems when they occurred. And they needed visibility for management. Finally, they just absolutely were adamant they had to get rid of spreadsheets. The spreadsheets had to go if they were going to realize the kind of economies of scale that Unanet would deliver to them. They were able to reduce their entire billing cycle by 2 days. Now, 2 days doesn't sound like much, but if your manual billing cycle took 10 people and 15 days, and an automated billing cycle can be done with 3 or 4 people in 12 or 13 days, that's huge. And we don't make money in the GovCon business by return at the bottom line. We make money on turnover. So day sales outstanding is our metric. That's the one we live and die by. The sooner you get that invoice out the door, collect the cash, and so you can spend it again, the more return on investment your company will have at the end of the year. That's what we're all about, return on your investment. With Unanet, that bid to bill progress really comes alive. Whether it's a brand new project, a delivery order on an old IDIQ, or a mod to an existing contract, adding scope, adding funds, initiating that increase in funding, planning for the increased work, executing it, and then getting the bill out the door in a format the customer likes. By the way, the best billing format's the one the customer will pay every time. Once we can do that with an integrated tool set, eliminate the spreadsheets and not have to manipulate the data manually, it's a huge benefit to the organization. If your accounting team is increasing along with your growth, as if it were a linear function, that's a primary sign that something's wrong. When that happens, profitability goes down. Accounting headcount is usually increasing in that situation. Efficiencies aren't getting better. If anything, they might be going down as well, and costs are increasing. Finally, your G&A, which should get benefit of most of the economies of scale as you grow, doesn't. I've seen companies with a legacy system that had to do a lot of manual work outside the system that experienced this kind of linear growth in the back office as the company grew, that had 12, 13, 15% G&A. 3 years later, at triple their size, they still had a 12, 13, 15% G&A. And I asked myself and them, why is that? And they said, well, we had to add 6 more people in billing. We had to add 3 more people in project control. We had to add 2 more people to do all the recurring reporting project managers need. And the reality is, with the right tool, no, you don't. You don't have to do that. With the right tool, your G&A expenditures can go down as a percentage of your total cost, significantly in some cases. Again, we have a case study showing that post-implementation, and this is not for over years and years, this is from 2016, this is 2 years ago. After implementing Unanet, this customer grew, and you can see from 2016 to 2017, they grew by, looks like over 50%, and they did it without adding a single head to the back office. Why? Because Unanet, with its efficiencies of operation, let them do the same job with the same number of people, just more data points, because the system handled the increase in the data, not the people. And finally, it's those pesky audits. We're all preparing for that June 30 deadline. If you have to do an incurred cost submission and you're on a calendar year with your books, that thing's due at the end of this month. That's an every year kind of thing. For some companies, that's a nightmare. It's a month with the accounting staff offline doing all those schedules, tying them out, reconciling them. If you have a system that's truly integrated so that all the pieces tie together all the time, that reconciliation step isn't the nightmare that it can be with legacy systems. Even things as simple as time charging. When your employees can only see and charge to projects that they've been authorized to charge to, when those authorizations can be conveniently increased, decreased, eliminated, initiated, even by the project manager rather than in the back office, then those kinds of inadvertent errors are almost eliminated. When their access is secure, when their records are viewable and auditable, not only by themselves and their managers, but by other people throughout the organization, when supervisors can see and improve the entire timesheets, and when you can add project level approvals, project by project, as you go through the year, and do it in a streamlined fashion that lets you still process those time cards to get the paychecks out the door. The kind of expensive billing errors that happen, the kind of things that really trip companies on audit, just don't happen. They never get in the system in the first place. With the incurred cost submission, all of the costs are in the right place. The system demands it. It's set up to do it that way. It's very difficult to get cost into Unanet in the wrong place by accident. You can do it on purpose. I've done it a few times when something just needed to be somewhere else, but doing it by accident, very difficult. Even SOX compliance for public companies, Unanet addresses the primary elements that the accounting system has to address for SOX. Sorry, Freudian slip. And then there's the project managers. I talked about how they only have one question, and that's where am I? But they occasionally will ask a few others as well, like who's available to work my job? Who do I have that has this skill set or that skill set? What's my ROI on the project? What are my KPIs, my key performance indicators for the project? And can I see them project by project? Can I see them all roll together? Can I see them by customer? Can I see them for individual pieces of a project? And the answer to all those things is sure. And it's not a separate system. It's not an add-on. It's not extra cost. And it's not something that you have to design or set up. It comes with the system. It's part of the integrated application. And the data that makes it run is the same data that's running billings, that's in your general ledger, that's on your timesheets and your expense reports. It's a byproduct of doing the accounting and not an end product that has to be separately managed. From resource management to real-time project status, it gives the project manager tools that they can use on a daily basis or once a week as they choose, and never be 2 weeks behind getting data, or the data they got this week was really from the end of the month, and part of the data in that batch is from the 16th of the month. It's almost 2 months, or almost a month old now. Project managers, whether they're bid managers, whether they're in the initiation group, whether they're the PMO at the headquarters of the organization, or whether they're a mid-level project manager on a large project responsible for a task or a group of tasks for the execution. All of these people have access to the same data with organizational limits. So if I want to restrict a project manager to only an organization, I can do that. If a company wants to maintain an organization as a self-contained unit, no peeking over the wall, they can do that. If they want the entire organization to be managed on a matrix with projects and disciplines in a two-dimensional matrix, they can do that. But they don't have to have separate outside products or additional modules to do it. It's just part of the system. This is truly a project-based enterprise resource planning system. It's designed to serve the needs from initiation to execution to billing, collecting the cash, and spending it again, all in one database. We think you would want to consider Unanet. It's a customer-centric partner for you and your business. It's a world-class client experience. Our clients, our founder says, our clients are our jewels. We polish them every day. Fran knows clients. She's been doing this at Unanet since the late 80s. And she's absolutely right. So what makes a project ERP special? And here we're talking about Unanet. And Unanet is in fact special. Every transaction has a project, a department or an org, and a GL. So that has a destination, it has an origin, and it has a classification of the kind of cost it is. And that three-dimensional view, destination, origin, classification, lets us look at the data in one system multiple different ways with multiple viewpoints. The time collection system attaches directly, charges directly, knows all the information about the task that an individual works on. And individuals only see the tasks they're authorized to work on. And that authorization doesn't need to be granted after an email and an approval and a back office action, and 2 days from now it finally appears on a person's timesheet. No, with the right roles and the right access, project manager can go in the system, assign somebody, click the button to save it, and it's on their timesheet. And an email appeared in their inbox to say, you've been assigned to work on this job. The costing architecture can be tailored for every project and every task. We've all had the special project that's labor only, doesn't allow non-labor cost. That's an easy architecture setup for a project. In fact, it's done every day, project by project. If you have projects that only allow non-labor or only subcontracts for one task and only your own employees for a different task, but rolls them together at the top of the project, those are easy setup choices in Unanet. The visibility you need into the financials of every project, the profit, the cost, the billing, the people, the non-labor costs, the expense reports, those are all available with a few clicks of a button. But more important, if you need to see all of the projects for customer 1 or customer 10 roll together, you can do that. So you can look at profitability by customer. You can look at profitability and a project status report, for example, for 3 projects rolled together, but not the rest of the projects on that customer. It's completely flexible. You see what you need when you need to, without having to deal with pages and pages of data that isn't active or a wrong project, or worse, have to put the data into a spreadsheet to get a total on the 3 projects you want to look at. It's a resource tool. Project managers can literally go into the system and say, I need 2 Java programmers and 1 senior web application developer. Who've I got? And see not only the people available with those skill sets, but the utilization of those people. Who has time available? Who's already overcommitted? You can do complete financial reporting at the project level, at the organization level, at the enterprise level, and everything in between. And if I need to pick 2 projects for a customer out of this organization and 3 projects for the same customer out of a different organization and get a roll-up, I can do that. It'll take me about 10 seconds. It's standard reporting. And that standard reporting can be easily modified to reflect cost elements the way you want to see them, to calculate metrics the way you define them, to put things like a wrap rate on a report that people often don't think about, or if they do, have to calculate in a spreadsheet. All the key performance indicators you need to help drive the business, whether they're organizational KPIs, project KPIs, or even people KPIs. They're all available in the system without having to go outside, dump the data in a spreadsheet, and do more manual calculations. Finally, system controls that send notifications and reminders to employees, to project roles like project manager, project lead, project assignment person. All of those kinds of system controls and notifications can be configured to be sent automatically from the system. You can notify the project manager when we've billed 90% of revenue or 70% of revenue, or when cost incurred are 60% of the total estimated cost, or the funding. All of those notifications are user modifiable and user defined. It comes with a standard set that has literally hundreds, but we have clients that have created additional hundreds of their own. It's all because all of the data is in one place. It's in one data schema with one technology stack and one resource or access security model to give people access to it. Whether you choose Unanet or any other tool out there, make sure you can answer these questions. And if there's no other slide that you look at from the copy you get after this webinar, look at this one. Is the system you're considering really a project-based system? Or is it a general ledger somebody has tacked a project ledger onto, and that project ledger will have to constantly be synced to keep it in step with the general ledger? Is it a web-based architecture? Does it really have one database? Or does it have one data instance with 4, 5, 6 different data schemas housed in one place? One for T&E, one for the accounting system, another one for budgeting and planning, and you still have to sync between tables inside the database. We don't do that at Unanet. Is it a customer-centric company you're buying from, or is it a product company? Do they consider the people they work with to be their clients, or are they a customer like a retail transaction? Will the system require customizations? We don't like the C word. That's a bad word in our business. We like the little C word, configuration. Customization is expensive. And eventually, the company that produces the software will do something that breaks that customization, and it'll have to be redone. It's the gift that keeps on giving. Cost-wise, we don't do that if we can possibly help it. Will the system meet the needs of your teams? Not just the back office team, not just the project management team, not those two teams separately, but all the teams with one app, one database, one security model. That's critical. Will the teams actually save time and save money from using this system? If we use it effectively, will it really cut our back office costs? Because it should. A true ERP, a true enterprise resource planning system, will streamline things and eliminate duplications that will save you a huge amount. And it doesn't take 3, 4, 5, 10 years to realize those savings. They start happening almost immediately. And then finally, what's the reputation of the software company you're dealing with? Do their customers love them? We think ours do. Or do they have a love-hate relationship with the company they get their software from? We see all too much of that. And what's the true cost of ownership? Not just the SaaS fees to use the software, not just support to get upgrade versions, not just consulting or implementation costs, but all of the other costs, the operations cost, the people cost, all of the other things that it takes to run a real ERP system. Have you taken them all into consideration? You definitely should when you're selecting a new system. Even the least expensive of the legacy accounting systems tend to fare very poorly when you do a full-up true cost of ownership, because the people cost and manual effort cost and frustration cost of people who are flying blind because they don't know where they're going far outweighs the cost of a good piece of software and an effective implementation. At Unanet, we offer you one piece of software for projects, to manage your people, to manage your financials, to report on all of the above, from planning, the CRM and pipeline stuff, the scenario planning, even pricing of future jobs. The execution, entering timesheets, entering expense reports, getting the approvals of all those things, paying people, getting approvals on everything from invoices out the door to new funding modifications on jobs. The ability to do collaboration, to store notes in the database, not as a pointer to an outside system like SharePoint, but actually in your accounting database that'll live and grow with the system, always be associated with that project, and even survive the upgrades from version to version unscathed. We give you the ability to monitor your performance, real-time dashboards, the kind of dashboard that you can click on and then pick up the phone, call John or Sally and say, hey, put that timesheet in. I need to see that data. And then 5 minutes later, click on it again and see the data. Things like project status, burn rates, margins, backlog, all of those things are outputs of the system. They're side effects of doing the work in the system to plan and execute the job. They're not an additional task somebody has to perform. The system even has a basic earned value management system built in. So that next solicitation that says, check this box, if you have a working earned value management system implemented at your company, you can check that box. The capability is there once the system is live and operating. Sure, you might have to put some additional data in, like ETCs or EACs for the project that needs earned value reporting, but the capability is there from day one. To recognize your revenues, to demonstrate gap compliance, to understand the difference between T&M, fixed price, and cost plus contracts. Every ERP system ought to do it. At Unanet, it's built in. With revenue recognition, you can do it as worked, on a percent complete, on a scheduled basis, as billed, and probably a half a dozen other capabilities, especially in the cost plus world, where things can get very specific about what carries fee and what doesn't carry fee. The system can do it and do it automatically. And finally, on the accounting end, the general ledger. The general ledger is just that. It's a ledger where all the costs are recorded as a byproduct of all the other processes in the system. Accounts payable becomes a process that you do, but doesn't have to be done in order to see the project costs. Those are separate. Same thing with accounts receivable. It's not a separate process. It happens because you did billing. And cost pools. Once defined, you can calculate your actual rates based on the defined pools in a matter of seconds. And produce a report that any auditor can lay right down beside your trial balance and see where every single balance in the trial balance went, how it got used, what pool or base it was in, and what the resulting rate was. So maybe you're ready to jump to a new pond. Maybe your current fishbowl has gotten just a little bit restrictive. Or maybe you're just planning for the future. You know, we have a few months of running room here this summer, but as we go into the fall, that's the award season. I laugh because sometimes people say GovCon's not seasonal, and it's very much seasonal. The fall is the award season. Spring is proposal writing. Summer is evaluations and best and final offers. And then we do it all over again in the fall when the new batch of fiscal year money comes available. Maybe you're ready for that next jump. Maybe that step function that small GovCons find is their growth mode is going to happen to you this year. Be ready. Give us a call. It's been nice talking with you.